everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Katie, otherwise known as the Vintage Academic. I am a transfer student at UC Berkeley. I study Anthropology and Archaeology. Important to this video, I am also the head of the Transfer Admissions Office at Accepted Consulting, which is a small college admissions consulting firm that helps students get into their dream universities. And today I'm going to use my expertise as a transfer admissions consultant and all of the essays that I've had to review through that job and tell you the worst mistakes you could possibly make on your college admissions essay. These are definitely mistakes to avoid because they have the potential of getting you rejected to the universities that you applied to. Before we get started, if you yourself are working on your transfer admission essays, go ahead and follow the links in the description below to go to the transfer admissions consultation page at Accepted Consulting, where you can book an appointment with me. We can talk about what your transfer goals are, and we can also talk about your essays. So if that all sounds good, hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for more videos like this, and let's get started. Mistake number 1. Writing a generic essay. Now, this is probably advice that you've heard tossed around if you've done any research into writing essays for college admissions, but what exactly does it mean? A generic essay is really any essay that's about some kind of generic topic that does not come from a unique perspective. I always say that it's totally okay to write about a quote-unquote generic topic as long as it's coming from a unique perspective. You're explaining and illustrating why that maybe generic topic is relevant, impactful, and significant in your life. But a generic essay that reads, I want to go to this university because it's a great university and I will get good grades there and it will help me become a great blank, is not a very good essay. It tells the universities why you think you should go to that university, but doesn't really illustrate anything about who you are, what your career goals are, how the university is going to help you get there, and how that relationship is going to be mutually beneficial if they admit you. Generic essays often start with repeating the prompt in some shape or manner, such as saying, like, if the question was, what makes you qualified for admission to our university? If your essay said, I am qualified for admission to this university because, you can probably guess that that's going to be a generic essay. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be a unique topic, but it must come from a unique perspective, which is your perspective, and how that topic relates to your life. Mistake number 2 is writing the resume essay. Now, this probably sounds very similar to a generic essay, but the resume essay is when you take all of your extracurriculars and activities, awards, honors, and coursework, and write it out in paragraph form. This is not going to be helpful. In fact, it's probably going to be detrimental because the universities can already see what your extracurriculars are, what your coursework is, what your transcript looks like, if you've already filled out all of that information on your application. They don't need you to reiterate it in your essays. The essays are to provide context to who you are as a person, so you can talk about some of the extracurriculars or the coursework that you've taken, but really develop that into a narrative about why this major, what is it about this extracurricular was so inspirational or had an aha moment or was significant to your life, and really connecting that personal anecdote back to why you want to transfer, how it taught you skills, what you learned, etc., etc. So listing out all the things that technically, theoretically make you a qualified person for transfer admissions or just admissions in general is going to be way less helpful than actually taking one of those things and explaining why that was so impactful and significant to your life and how it showed you that you want to major in a certain field of study, etc., etc. Like I said, providing context to who you are as a person, so they're not seeing a name and numbers on a page. Mistake number 3, and this one should be fairly obvious, plagiarism. Do not plagiarize your essays. In fact, I'm like pretty sure that universities use some kind of plagiarism detection. I mean, my university uses plagiarism detection software for just my homework assignments that I upload. They look to see if I'm citing things correctly, if I'm copying anyone else's work, if I'm copying my own previous work. So I would not be surprised to learn that they do the same thing for college admissions essays. Plagiarism doesn't tell the universities anything about you besides the fact that you're willing to cheat. It shows them that you didn't put in the time or work to write a thoughtful essay. It shows them that you probably waited until the last minute, that you thought you could get away with cheating, and that you're willing to steal another person's work. Honestly, plagiarism is one of the worst things you can do, just in terms of academics because again, you're stealing somebody else's work and trying to pass it off as your own. And again, it does nothing to show the universities who you are as a person besides all those negative traits that I just listed. Mistake number 4, writing a sob story. Now this one might come across a little surprising, but most universities don't like sob stories. A sob story that just says, boo-hoo, this thing happened in my life, therefore you should give me admissions, is not a very compelling story. I'm sure tons of admissions officers are going to be reading essays like this, and again, they don't really tell the universities anything about your life besides the fact that this thing happened. However, that is not to say that if something that could be considered a sob story happened in your life and it was significant and impactful, that you shouldn't talk about it. I think it's totally okay to talk about the challenges that you faced in your life as long as you can put a positive spin on it. The admissions officers are not reading your college essays to be bummed out. They're reading your essays to see how you approach responding to prompts, to see how you write, to see how you convey information about yourself, how you think, how you put things into context, so on and so forth. So if there is something considered a sob story that is really important to you and it perhaps explains why you got bad grades or why you had to withdraw for a semester or why it took you extra long at community college, that's definitely something that you want to talk about. But make sure that as you're telling that story, you're relating it back to your educational journey, you're relating it maybe back to your major, and you're talking about the things that you learned from that life experience. For example, I talked about the fact that my dad died when I was 12 and kind of the domino effect that that had on my life and my academic journey. I wanted to tell that story because again, it was so impactful in my life. It affected my grades, it affected my ability to go to university, it affected my finances. It's one of the reasons why I went to community college. So it was something that I really wanted the universities to know because it explained why my educational journey looked the way it did. However, at the end of that story, I was able to say, but here are the things that I learned, here's how I grew from this experience, and how this experience has shaped me into a person going forward. Mistake number 5. Revealing too much information. While your college admissions essays should reveal information about you, like I've been saying, adding context to your application, showing them how you think, what makes you tick, the things that you're passionate about, what inspires you, the skills you've learned, there is such a thing as telling too much. Some topics that I would steer people away from sharing are things like sexually explicit topics, or illegal activities, or times when you've made a bad judgment call. Like if you talk about the fact that you tried drugs when you were in high school, or detailing a very explicit sexual interaction with somebody, that is too much information and things that the universities do not want to know. Especially if you are talking about illicit activities or breaking the law, it's just best not to incriminate yourself. That is information and story times that are best kept for your friends, definitely not something that an admissions officer wants to read. And like I said, the admissions officers aren't just looking at your stories and how they're written, but they're also looking at the ways that you choose to respond to the prompts. So if they see that you chose to share this kind of inappropriate information with them, that also tells them information about who you are as a person, not just the thing that you wrote about. Mistake number 6, getting off topic. When you are writing these application essays, it can be pretty easy to end up writing an essay that doesn't answer the question. So when you go to write your college admissions essays, make sure that you are reading the prompt, thinking about how you can answer that prompt, and then actually writing a response that answers that prompt. Even if your essay needs to take a veer away from the prompt to explain something, it should always come back around to the prompt and try to answer what it's asking you to answer. Like I said in the last one, they're not just gauging what you write about, but how you respond to the prompts and whether or not that response is appropriate. Mistake number 7, writing a cliche essay. Cliches are cliches for a reason. They are not unique. These are things that are fairly common or universal, or things that people say a lot. And when you are writing a college admissions essay, it has to be as unique as you can possibly make it. It has to reflect your uniqueness as a person and a student and possible student at their university. So using cliches is not the way to go when you want to deliver like a super contextually specific story about you as an individual. There you go. Mistake number 8, sounding apologetic. I can understand how some people might write something that sounds apologetic because maybe you got some bad grades or you had to withdraw for a semester and you're trying to explain that, and you start writing like, I know this happened, but I'm still a great student, or I'm so sorry that I regret that I had to take these classes out, or I'm still a really good student, so please let me into your university. Coming across as apologetic or like you're pleading, it shows that you lack the confidence to stand up for yourself and say like, hey, look, look at the hard work that I've done, look at all of the amazing strengths and qualities that I have about myself that would make me a fantastic student. It sounds like you're trying to get ahead of them telling you no by apologizing before they've gotten the chance to say that. It is a way better strategy to explain the weaknesses in your application, such as poor grades or withdrawing for a semester, than it is to apologize for them. Explaining them shows the universities, again, context of your life, the situations you've been through, the things that you've had to overcome. Apologizing just makes it sound like you don't believe that they're going to let you in the first place. So it's always better to explain rather than to apologize any weaknesses that you think may exist in your application. Mistake number 9, style, flow issues, telling instead of showing. Essentially what I'm saying here is that if your writing is coming across more like you're telling them rather than you're showing them, or maybe you have kind of an awkward flow or an unusual style, that can be off-putting to somebody reading your admissions essay. It is so important to show and illustrate and describe to them your experiences, the things that have made you the person that you are today, the skills that you've learned, and why you're passionate about your major than it is to tell them. I mean, you tell me, which one sounds more appealing? I love anthropology because I like studying people. Or the first time that I stepped foot onto an archaeological dig was the first time that I knew anthropology was the correct major for me. Which one sounds more compelling to you? So definitely showing and illustrating, because they need to see where those skills have come from, how you've learned, how you've responded to situations. They don't want you to tell them. So you can tell an admissions officer anything that you want to tell them, but showing them is what is going to convince them of the things that you've done that make you a good student. And mistake number 10, the last one, the most important one, is not proofreading your essays. Why don't people proofread their essays? Proofreading written work is like the #1 rule that you learn in school when you are learning how to write and taking English classes. And it's probably the most important thing you could do when it comes to college admissions essays, because not only are you looking at like grammar and punctuation, but you're also looking for flow and style, and does it really tell the story that I want it to tell? How's it gonna sound if somebody reads it out loud? A whole table of admissions officers. Please, for the love of God and all that is holy, proofread your essays. Even if you are just reading them out loud to yourself, or you're having a friend look over them, or you're coming to us at Accepted Consulting to have us look over your essays professionally, whatever it is, please do not submit essays that have not been proofread. Not proofreading your essays is just a part of like the holistic view that admissions officers take when they're looking at your essays. If you have grammatical and punctuation errors, they're probably not going to make or break it, but they do tell the universities that you were either rushing or that you were careless enough to let those mistakes slip through. 1 or 2 here or there, not a big deal, but if your entire essay has not been proofread and it's full of spelling errors and grammar mistakes and it doesn't flow well as a whole cohesive essay, then that's going to be a problem. So please proofread your essays, and again, I am always available as a consultant if you would like me to read your essays. Just find my links in the description below. Well, alright, that was all I had for you today, the 10 mistakes to avoid while writing your college admissions essays. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more UC Berkeley, vintage, community college transfer, archaeology related content. That list keeps getting longer. Check out my links below to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me if you're working on your transfer application and need some help. I am always happy to meet and talk and help as much as I can. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!